Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Dr. Jade Teta, and the question is, what about intermittent fasting for women? I get questions about this all the time. Hey Jade, I know intermittent fasting is supposed to work really well for men. What about us women? Well, here's the interesting thing. Intermittent fasting can work tremendously well for women. Obviously, it can be a wonderful approach. However, other women can crash and burn on such a regime, and I want to help you understand if that may be the case for you and why things are a little different for women when it comes to eating regimes like intermittent fasting. Here's the first thing that you need to understand. Men, when they hit puberty, are pretty much in the same hormonal state all the way until they hit andropause as an elderly man. Women, once they hit puberty, they go through many other changes. Puberty, pregnancy, perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, stress reactions. Oftentimes, obviously, their hormones change throughout the month, and this will impact how well a dietary regime will work for them. Here's the thing that a lot of people don't understand. Dieting and exercising can be stress reducing. However, it can also be something that elicits a stress response. When you take a regime too far, if you overtrain, if you undereat, these things can become a stress to the physiology. And women, unlike men, have a more sensitive stress system. And this makes sense because women are the gender of childbearing and child rearing. And so their metabolism is a little bit more into surveillance and looking around the environment and saying, is it safe? Is it appropriate? Is there enough sort of relaxing and regenerative sort of inputs in my life to have a baby? Or is it constantly stressful? And this is what their hormones do. And so I often like to think about estrogen and progesterone, the two main female hormones here, as two sisters, twin sisters, but non-identical. And one twin sister is very resilient and rambunctious and adventurous and wanting to go out and explore the world and can handle stress and can handle over-exercising and can handle when calories are too low and or calories are too high. She's a little bit more resilient and strong and courageous in that regard. Now, her other sister is a little bit more sensitive and a little bit more worried and wants to make sure estrogen doesn't get in trouble. And so when estrogen is around, women can handle more stress. But when progesterone is around, women can handle less. And so you can imagine during the first half of the cycle, what happens is estrogen is up. It's up in the first 2 weeks of the cycle. Progesterone is low, but after that, progesterone peaks. And then progesterone starts to dominate. So right away, you can see that at least in younger menstruating women, there are certain times of the month that might be better for intermittent fasting or any kind of regime that depletes nutrients or takes energy out of the system. They would handle that better in a more estrogen state. Now, obviously, too, when women go into pregnancy, they become a little bit more progesterone dominant. And in breastfeeding, they do as well. Now, at perimenopause, progesterone falls down and is pretty much flatlined, but estrogen has this very volatile sort of jumping around sort of way of behaving at perimenopause, which means it's unpredictable how intermittent fasting or things like that might impact a woman at that time. Of course, at menopause, both of these hormones fall. Now, that doesn't mean that intermittent fasting won't necessarily work, but I did want you to be aware of the fact that these hormones are impacting women differently than the way they're impacting men. So how would you know then if intermittent fasting for you is appropriate? Well, obviously, most people are intermittent fasting for several reasons, mainly to be healthier and lose weight. And so there's 3 ways that you can kind of tell whether intermittent fasting is going to work for you as a woman. First of all, the first thing that you kind of want to sort of understand here is, does intermittent fasting cause increased hunger and cravings? Remember, hunger and cravings are hormonal things. And so if you have increased hunger and cravings, this is highly correlated with an increased stress response. And so if your hunger and cravings go so high that you can't control your intake of food and you go on an intermittent fasting regime and then you end up binging like crazy, that's an indication that it's a little too stressful for you. And you may actually find that certain times of the month when estrogen's dominating, intermittent fasting doesn't upset hunger and cravings. But other times of the month, it does when progesterone is dominating. So that's one thing to look out for. The other thing here is weight loss is another indication here. If you're going to lose weight and keep it off, you want two things. You want calorie reduction and you want hormonal balance. So if that is the case, you should be able to lose weight pretty easily on intermittent fasting. Now, many women know this. They do intermittent fasting. They may not feel excessive hunger and cravings, but the weight doesn't come off. That's partly as a result of having and eliciting certain stress hormones that reduce your ability to lose weight, make you a little bit more insulin resistant, or silently make you eat a little bit more without you being aware. So if your hunger and your cravings don't go through the roof or actually get better on intermittent fasting, that's a good sign. If you also begin to lose a little weight, that's a good sign. And the final thing here is something that I call SHMEC. It's a funny little acronym that stands for sleep, hunger, mood, energy, and cravings. Now, we've already talked about the hunger and the craving aspect of this. We know that those tell us a little bit about hormonal balance and estrogen and progesterone, but so does sleep, mood, and energy. So when your SHMEC is in check, when you're sleeping appropriately, your hunger is balanced, your mood is stable, your energy is predictable and high, and there are no cravings, this is a great indication that you are not under hormonal stress, that your system can handle intermittent fasting really well. However, if your SHMEC goes out of check, you're having sleep disruption, your hunger and cravings are through the roof, your mood is low or anxious, you're having unpredictable and unstable energies while intermittent fasting, this would mean it's not a great thing for you. So you can see that by paying attention to these three things and understanding the biochemistry of estrogen and progesterone, you can determine whether intermittent fasting is best for you. Now here's the thing, I have devoted my life to hormonal biochemistry. That's what I do. I'm a functional endocrinologist. I specialize for men and women in how these hormones impact physiology. I've developed a brand new program specifically for women. Now, you women who have followed me have probably heard me talk about the idea that you want to stop being a dieter and become a metabolic detective. And many of you have bought those programs to teach you how to be a metabolic detective. This new program goes much deeper into the biochemistry and hormonal aspects of this. I call it the Metabolic Female Architect. So yes, now hopefully you've learned that you don't want to be a dieter, that you want to start being a metabolic detective. Now I'm going to help you become a metabolic architect. We deep dive into female athletes, perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause, what happens with breastfeeding, what happens at pregnancy, what happens during the menstrual cycle, what happens with illness, what happens with sleep deprivation. We go into Hashimoto's, thyroiditis, and adrenal stuff, and all of that stuff in this particular program. Now, here is the thing. You getting this video, this is your invitation to apply. And I say apply because our team has created 2,500 units of the Metabolic Female Architect program. We have 1 million people on our list, 1 million females waiting for this program that this is going out to. And so what we're afraid of and what we don't want to happen is all of these people rushing in. We only want the individuals who really want to take their education to the next level. So we are doing this with an application process. Now, this is not a cheap program. It's going to be several $100s, but it is going to be a program that you can use for the rest of your life, and you will revisit again and again and again as a woman as you go through the different stages of your life. This is your invitation to apply. There's a link next to this video. I want you to hit that link. All you have to do is go ahead and hit that link. We'll get your information, and our metabolic coaches will get in touch with you and see about getting your program to you with your reservation. I hope you enjoyed this education, and I hope it gave you a little sort of glimpse into when intermittent fasting may or may not be good for a female and whether or not it's good for you. And I hope to see you in the Metabolic Female Architect program. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll see you at the next training.